Hi everyone, and welcome to the Wits Students Physician Society YouTube channel. We have recently launched our brand new research competition in collaboration with UCT MedSoc and the Undergraduate Journal for Medical Research. We have a brand new YouTube series where we go into all things research and will help you with your submissions. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to this session on some basic scientific English. My name is Liz Wolvaardt. I'm from the University of Pretoria and I'm an editor on the Undergraduate Research in Health Journal, which aims to support students to be able to start their publishing careers. But it's important to be able to write basic English so that you at least get past the screening process. Let's start. Important here is that scientific writing is not standard English, so don't be surprised when we look at your English and say, well, this doesn't make sense. It just takes a matter of practice. So your typical first attempt looks something like this, a day-to-day style. The idea of a sudden and unexpected death can be tricky to understand because these terms suggest a death happening to people who seem healthy and within a certain period that's not easy to define. Most cases of sudden death, or SD, happen outside of hospitals and without anyone there to see it. This creates a lot of confusion about what sudden death actually means. So that's our normal writing style. However, if you do it in a scientific style, it changes. So the concept of sudden and unexpected death is often challenging in its application, as the terms imply a death occurring in individuals with good perceived health and within a specific time frame that is often subjective and unquantifiable. Most cases of sudden death, SD, occur outside of hospital and unobserved by witnesses. As a result, there is a discrepancy regarding the definition of sudden death. So you can see, so the suggestion always is to write first in plain English and then to step back and write in a more scientific English. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to show you some tips in scientific English. So important for you is to get this right. It's not difficult to do, but if you don't do it, you're unlikely to pass the first step, which is a review by the editor-in-chief, because if your text is difficult to understand, you have zero chance of going through. People won't understand it, so no reviewer will understand it. So consider this like a shark attack. You want at least pass this round, so you don't want to show any blood in the water. Read the instructions, what's the headings, what is the font type, and so on. So you at least to get past the first round. So the first blood in the water is when you submit something that doesn't meet the structure or the word restrictions. So, for example, if you submit a 6,000 word article, even though it might be fantastic, it won't pass the first cursory review because you don't meet those requirements. So don't make that mistake. That's a rookie mistake. So correct headings, correct links. A few words here and there makes no difference. Nobody's going to count that, but even it's obviously too long or obviously wrong. And then once you sample, in other words, you're working with a group of occupational therapy students at a university, let's say of Kilimanjaro, but the minute you're working with the sample, the people that you spoke to or who completed your survey, they're no longer occupational health students. They're occupational therapy students. They then become either participants or respondents. So from that point onwards, from the results through to the discussion to the end, you can only refer to participants or respondents. Then in terms of scientific writing, any number that's less than 10 is written out. In other words, 2 participants, unless of course there's a list that says there were 2, 5, 9 and 23 something or another. Then the 2 and the 5 and the 9 should be as numbers because it's part of a bigger group. But if it's only 5 respondents said something, then you write it out in proper. So scientific language, you write things out a lot more. There's no shorthand. So sample size is less of 100. You have to always cite the number and the percentage. So you're going to say 14 participants were very negative about something or another, and not just 56%, because 56% sounds bad. Even if, let's say it was 95%. Wow, that's really bad. You must have changed the curriculum. Meanwhile, at 95% might have only been 22 students out of a group of whoever knows. So then when things are in brackets, when you write, things in brackets become silent. So you shouldn't say something, but then you can't read the bracket. Participants were still negative about the same thing, something or another. Rather write a small majority, n equals 14, semicolon, 56% of participants were negative about something or another. So anything in the bracket becomes silent when you read it. So just be careful of that. Then you introduce an abbreviation at the first use. Remember, abstracts are separate from the actual body of the text. So an abstract, you will apply this there, and then when you start the body of the text, you'll apply the same principle again. So World Health Organization, WHO, is the organization that does A, B, and C, and then after that, you only refer to the WHO. Pick your terms. So for example, if your sample size, or if your study is about professional nurses, then you refer to professional nurses, professional nurses, professional nurses, professional nurses. You only deviate if somebody in the literature used a different term. So Lipe et al. Reported that all their nurses could not describe the common features of X, Y, and Z. And the reason for that is there are different kinds of nurses. The same for doctors. A general practitioner is not the same as a physician, is not the same as a medical officer. So be very specific about your terms, and you only deviate if the literature used a different term. Then no shortcuts. Don't write like a medical student. You don't write third-year students who were unaware of something, or that Watson and Crick with the ampersand sign describe the structure of the double helix. You write third-year medical students were unaware. They still don't know anything, but at least the style is correct. And you write Watson and Crick, so you write it out properly. So key for you, write it all out. Go back to your matric English. This is not that serious, but it's not arterial bleeding, but even so, don't randomly capitalize letters. So doctors and nurses are just lowercase doctors and lowercase nurses, but the WHO, for example, is uppercase or capital letters, as we used to say, because it's a specific name of something. So be careful of that. Also, if you're saying something is better, faster, smaller, cheaper, bigger, than what? Whenever you use one of those words, you must put than in, or don't write it at all. So it's bigger than, it's faster than before, or faster than measured at baseline, for example. Don't forget to explain a term. So if you've put in the word adherence, the next sentence should be adherence is defined as da 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 da, because there are many different understandings of what adherence means. So don't use terms without explaining it in the very next sentence. Don't forget to cite your other authors, and don't repeat yourself. Look at your headings. If your heading says data management, then you only write about the data management. You don't tell me or the reader why the study was important. That you did earlier on under justification perhaps, but you don't repeat things in the wrong place, and you don't say the same thing over and over again. You have a word budget, so be very careful. Then in English, we usually write subject, verb, object. So the researchers interviews those who were injured, and not those who were injured or were interviewed by the researchers. That puts it in the passive tense, for example. So here is the active tense. The participants completed the questionnaire. The passive tense is the questionnaire was completed by the participants. You can just see, just by looking at it, the passive one is longer. It's less desirable. Rather use an active voice. You'll use less words, and it's much more direct. The other thing is, I just call it backward writing. I'm not sure what you actually call it, but you can usually spot it by having quite a long number of set words, a comma, and then it carries on. So here's an example. Taking into account all the environmental factors, comma, it is not surprising that something or another happened. Avoid that. Flip your backward writing around. Move it around and say it's not surprising that something or another happened, considering the effect of the environmental factors. Much easier, much more direct, and it's much simpler for the reader to get to what you're saying. What you don't want to do, although it's scientific English, it is very direct. You're not writing long bulleted sentences. The shorter the better, actually. Cut out dead word, because you've got a word count limit. And the fact is, the more dead wood you've got, which is unneeded words, the more difficult it is to understand what you're writing about. So this is typically one of the backward sentences. For the purpose of better understanding the disease, comma, we did something. No, we did something to understand the disease better. Here's another one. It seems as though it has become evident that more emphasis needs to be placed on postgraduate training. By the way, this comes out of publication, so there's a lot of words there. You could rather say it's evident that we need to place more emphasis on postgraduate training. It seems as though it has become evident. It's very wishy-washy. It has or has not. And again, here's another one. In the systematic review, we therefore aim to investigate something. No, we investigated something. That's it. That title is a systematic review, so just keep it simple. Also, the first sentence, for the purpose of better understanding the disease, you can say, to understand, we did something or another to understand the progression of diabetes in adolescents, for example. All is for the purpose of better, wada. It's just too wordy. Then, this journal, as all journals, have got requirements, so same font sizes, same font styles, in this case Times New Roman, the same spacing. They'll usually give you a style guide for how they want the headings, no underlined headings. That tables must not be cut off over pages. You must use your insert page break function. Your references should start on a new page, please. And you can activate grammar and spelling in Word. Have you done it? Or you can use ChatGPT for editing, or you can use Grammarly for editing of your language. So typically when you use ChatGPT, you would add it to ChatGPT and you say something like, you are my English language editor, please review this, and give it instructions. Review it for grammar and language, remove repetition, and remove redundant text. So there are a number of those that you can use. So ChatGPT is useful for language editing. If you're writing a full article, in other words, a manuscript of 3,000 words, your study design will be one of these. So if you go to this website, Equator Network, and you can see these are hyperlinked, and you open observational studies, for example, it will give you the different options, cohort, cross-sectional, and so on. And then these are the guidelines. You can download them, for example, and then check, have you done this? And what it says is, if you do these kind of studies, you should have explained how this or this happened. It gives you things that are expected academically. But you can also use ChatGPT, which is my favorite thing, for editing language, as you can, let me go back there for a moment. So you can go to ChatGPT and say it's your English language editor and give it instructions. Just use, for example, the stroke guidelines and point out, produce a report to point out the items that you forgot. And then you see if it fits. It's not 100% fit, but they point out every possible thing you could have possibly not reported on and should have. And then you can see, oh, it actually doesn't fit the kind of study I did, but you ignore it. But it might say something, oops, you never referred to or mentioned how you trained your field workers, which is expected, and then you can just add a sentence. Now, depending on the stance of the journal, so everyone has got a stance